The River Thames is no stranger to swimmers of all shapes and sizes. In fact, King Henry III's pet polar bear was known to use the river as his own personal hunting grounds in the 11th century. But now something else appears to be stalking these waters. Take a look for yourself. London, England, March 2016. A passenger is enjoying a scenic ride in a cable car overlooking the fabled Thames River, when something in the water below catches his eye and he manages to capture this shaky but shocking footage.
Loading valley is where Michael Fallon just across the way.
The video is unsteady and unfocused, so let's slow it down and zoom in. It appears to show a dark shape as it surfaces momentarily and then dips back beneath the murky waters. For field researcher Ken Gerhardt, this might be proof of an impressive discovery.
The humps are characteristic of alleged sea monster accounts from around the world. So this could potentially be something unknown.
The video naturally went viral, with people comparing the creature to the Loch Ness Monster and another legendary creature.
The Lake Windermere monster, or Bow Nessie, is an aquatic creature that's been reported from Windermere Lake in northern England, which is one of the largest lakes in England. And sightings are fairly recent for the most part.
Gerhardt notes that all famous sea monsters seem to share some common traits. Could they also share a common ancestor?
All of our lake monsters worldwide seem to dwell in cold water lakes along the lines of latitude from 40 to 60 degrees north, and with the highest concentration along the latitude line of 50 degrees. And the physical descriptions are also very similar. Massive serpentine animals ranging anywhere from 15 to 30 feet across.
Field researcher Cliff Barrickman says there's an even stranger possibility that stems from urban myths dating all the way back to the Victorian era.
There is a theory that what people are seeing is actually some sort of escaped crocodile or an alligator. People have reported seeing swans sucked from the top of the water and dragged underneath to their deaths. What's doing that? Maybe it is one of these escaped alligators or crocodiles or something like that.
For Gerhardt, though, the possibilities are quite limited. Sea monsters, as he said, or something equally big.
We could be dealing with some type of whale that strayed out of the ocean and came into fresh water. And in fact, this behavior has been documented before.
50 years ago, the Thames was so polluted it was considered to be biologically extinct. Since then, new protections have been put in place to restore the river, and the wildlife has returned. Could this be nature healing itself with a vengeance? Let's see what our experts have to say. When our marine biologist, Dr. Shay Conger, analyzes the video, she has her doubts about one popular online theory making the rounds.
Some people have speculated that this could be a submarine temporarily coming above the surface of the water. This doesn't look like a submarine to me because we don't see anything like a periscope. Rather, it's just kind of ambiguous humps.
Now, Dr. Conger has told us before that pollution could lead to strange mutations, but she doubts that this is some kind of giant mutant croc.
Crocodiles or alligators are exothermic animals that are adapted to warm environments. And the Thames is a fairly cold water estuary, and they would have a really hard time surviving here.
So what about a wayward whale? It wouldn't be the first time. A young minke whale was actually spotted in the Thames as recently as 2021.
If I had to guess, this looks something like a whale or other very large creature. The size of this object does fall within several large whale species. And in fact, humpback whales have been discovered in the Thames. And there's also been other species of whales that have been found here, including bottlenose whales.
Wildlife biologist Dr. Stephanie Shuttler respectfully disagrees. She thinks there's something fishy about the video.
It doesn't look like any sort of sea animal. It has these points emerging from the water. Whales and dolphins are really smooth, and it doesn't seem to be moving like an animal. We're not seeing it shift at all, and we see this dark shadow, but again, that's not moving at all. The other suspicious thing is when we see the so-called animal start to submerge, we don't see that dark spot disappear. So I think what we're seeing is just something added I think this is some sort of altered video.
So yes, this could be a hoax, but based on Dr. Conger's analysis, we're going to call this one an unidentified creature. I, for one, am calling this just another reason I'll never be taking a dip in an English river. February 2022, Sakon Nakhon, Thailand. A local man is on a Saturday stroll in his neighborhood when he sees something strange moving slowly in some dirty runoff. Knowing no one would believe him without proof, he reaches out to the creature with a jar and captures this. A long, tubular creature sits in some shallow water at the bottom of a barrel. It's about 2 feet long and it sure appears serpentine, but it's covered in what looks like an odd greenish fur. Let's watch that again. It rears its head and pokes a pair of tiny nostrils above the surface, and the tongue flicks out suddenly. Field researcher Ken Gerhardt fills us in on what the internet made of this fuzzy creature.
One theory is that we may be looking at an example of a real, genuine dragon. Many of our dragons in mythologies around the world are chimeras. That is, they combine different features from different types of animals. For example, a serpentine or reptilian body shape, but often adorned with mammal-like features like claws or hair, a beard, sometimes wings.
But aren't dragons usually bigger? This creature looks relatively small.
We have a type of dragon known as the basilisk, or the little king, which is a very tiny type of dragon that comes out of the Middle East. One could make an argument that this is representative of one of these small dragon stories.
One of the most compelling things about dragons is that they've been documented in mythologies around the world. It's hypothesized this may be because all cultures feared snakes. But some say this collective consciousness about dragons indicates our ancestors all actually encountered the same fantastic creatures. Let's turn to our experts for their thoughts on the reality of this serpentine beast. First, we turn to our veteran forensic analyst, Michael Primo, to determine whether this creature is real or just a clever digital mock-up.
Through physical aspects of the scene analysis, lens flaring from the camera, as well as lighting that was produced from behind the camera, the verdict is that this is an authentic video.
An authentic furry serpent? If we're gonna go there, let's talk about chimeras. They don't all have to be dragons, and in fact, there are some examples of chimeras in nature. We have the narwhal, the famed sea unicorn, a whale with a tusk reaching up to 10 feet in length. Some of these creatures are so unbelievable that even scientists doubted their existence. Take the duck-billed platypus, for example. Initially, 19th century naturalists were sure that specimens sent from Australia to Great Britain were hoaxed. Could this be, like the platypus, something entirely new? Marine biologist Shay Conger weighs in.
To me, this looks like a type of snake. You can see that it's flicking its tongue in and out, and that's one of the main ways that snakes sense their environment is by essentially tasting the air or testing the chemicals in the water around it to see if there's food or danger. But there's something unusual going on to where it's coated in this green fibrous material. Snakes, because they're reptiles, don't have fur.
Conger says mammals need fur to keep them warm, but reptiles don't.
Reptiles actually use the heat of the environment around them to warm their bodies.
We turn next to wildlife biologist Stephanie Shuttler. If it's not fur, what is it?
It really looks to me to be more plant-like.
Sounds wild, but animals with vegetation growing on them are more common than you think.
There are turtles that get algae on them and other snake species that get algae on them. Sloths have algae throughout their fur. Polar bears, when it's warmer, their fur will also turn a greenish color from the algae. But the really remarkable thing is that this snake is pretty much entirely covered.
So how, and more importantly, why did this happen?
The snake had to be moving very slowly because the plant spores need to embed themselves into the skin to grow onto it. It protects them, predators can't see them, and it helps them catch more prey because the prey can't see them as well. It also makes them smell like the environment. They're essentially carrying the environment on them. It could be that this snake intentionally let the algae grow on it as a survival strategy.
Our verdict? algal growth. This is one of those rare stories where the truth is just as fascinating as any legend. According to locals, this is a puffed-faced water snake. The next time it sheds, the algae will go with it, and a new bloom will need to take root on his body. September 2020. Jeannie Wilson of Taylorsville, North Carolina, is cleaning up after game night with family and friends. She heads into her sunroom where she comes across a modern-day monster. She records this video of a foot-long snake slithering around the bottom of a 5-gallon container with 2 heads. Based on the video, the snake's heads appear to be working independently of each other. Jeannie was nearly shocked out of her skin.
I spotted him in the corner of the sunroom. I thought somebody had stepped on his head and mashed it. And I looked really close and I said, "You've got 2 heads," and it's like, wow, for a 2-headed snake to make it that long out in the wild is amazing.
Field researcher Cliff Barrickman believes that animals like this 2-headed serpent may have been the original inspiration for many of the world's most fearsome mythical monsters.
Probably the only thing scarier than a snake might be a 2-headed snake. If we look back into ancient times, you can find stories of multi-headed animals, like the multi-headed dog Carabas that guarded the gates of hell, or the Hydra, the many-headed snake monster. And I think that behind these sorts of stories is always a grain of truth.
Field researcher Ken Gerhardt lays out a more sinister idea. Warning, these images could be disturbing.
I'm thinking of a Russian scientist who is able to successfully attach the head of a dog to another dog.
That would be Dr. Vladimir Demikhov, a pioneering Russian surgeon who transplanted one dog's head onto the neck of another dog back in 1968. The conjoined animals survived for 38 days.
So we can't rule out the possibility that this 2-headed snake could be the result of a similar type of experimentation.
Sadly, about 3/4 of all conjoined twins die before, during, or soon after birth. So how did the snake get this way, and how did it survive? Is this fantastic beast unnaturally lucky, or is it a bit too fantastic? First, we brought the video to Roxy Furman to assess the authenticity.
I've seen conjoined twins before of various different other species, but my initial instinct was, is this head real or not? And up until kind of halfway through, this second head is not kind of using its tongue to smell the environment. But then there was a point where the second head, its tongue comes out, and at this point you can see it's kind of wanting to move in a different direction, which then made me think this is real.
Furman says these 2-headed creatures are examples of a natural but mysterious mutation called polycephaly.
There's a lot that we still don't understand about conjoined twins. If there are 2 heads, both which have their own consciousness, then who kind of overrides the control of the body, or whether they communicate with one another as 2 individuals would.
Furman refutes the idea that this multi-headed snake could be the product of human experimentation, similar to that of Soviet scientists in the 1950s.
There's no indication of recent surgery, there's no stitches or suture marks.
So it's a real, natural-born snake. But what explains its mutation and its survival?
It seems to be doing pretty well. This is unique because we don't often see animals with 2 heads that seem to be healthy, because they don't tend to survive in the wild.
And while Conger is positive the snake isn't some bizarre experiment, she says the genetic mutation we see here may still have been caused by humans, just not intentionally.
Amphibians and reptiles, like snakes, are actually just really prone to mutation. And a lot of this has to do with environmental pollution. It's been shown that there's a number of pollutants that can actually cause malformations in wildlife, and we're seeing this increasingly today.
So, our verdict. This snake was an example of polycephaly, quite possibly caused by pollution. What became of it is this story's happy ending. Jeannie gave the snake to a friend, and here's his update. He says he named the serpent Double Trouble and says he's alive and well.
When Double Trouble was found, he was already a few months old, so he had a good start. He's approaching a year old, and he's never refused a meal. He's just been thriving, and that's the sign that he's gonna make it and possibly live to adulthood. I always wanted a two-headed snake, so it was kind of like a dream come true, and I've loved working with him ever since.
It's March 2020, a hot and humid day in the Brazilian Amazon. Local fishermen are crossing the Xingu River when they encounter an extraordinary sight. At first, it almost looks like waves or ripples, but let's have a closer look. It's some kind of gigantic snake. This thing is nightmarish, and by one estimate, it's 50 feet long. Field researcher Ken Gerhardt says it immediately reminds him of the legendary river serpent known as Boyuna, a gigantic mythical deity of South America.
It's described as being an enormous black snake or serpent, and it's considered to be a guardian of sorts, that it actually stands guard at certain sacred places.
But huge snakes aren't just part of folklore. They're actually part of the Amazonian fossil record. This is the prehistoric predator Titanoboa, which measured more than 40 feet long, its midsection as wide as a man's waist. It weighed over a ton and could stay underwater for as long as 45 minutes.
This thing did in fact exist, and in this kind of habitat. Who's to say that they're all gone?
The fossil record shows that Titanoboa went extinct millions of years ago, but field researcher Cliff Barrickman notes that sometimes allegedly extinct species turn up alive and well. Example, the famous coelacanth fish.
The coelacanth fish was thought to be extinct for millions of years, like 20 million years, until it was discovered in the 1930s, swimming around in the oceans off of Indonesia. So we should expect to be discovering animals that were either thought to be extinct or are related to extinct animals.
Wow. Is the creature in the video some kind of relic species, some extremely large cousin of the Titanoboa that somehow survived? And when the Amazonian tribespeople described Boyuna, the serpent river god, could they really have been talking about something real? We turn to our experts.
I mean, this is extraordinary.
Wildlife biologist Lucy Eckersley finds the video remarkable.
It could be that this snake is a living relic of Titanoboa, something that could trace its lineage back to that enormous animal.
But she thinks the serpent might be too big to be believed.
I think that this is an incredible sighting of an enormous snake. I think that this video has been stretched and manipulated to make it look even more enormous than it really was.
So we head back to forensic video analyst Michael Primo to authenticate the footage.
This video has left me baffled. We have a rippling effect that's consistent with the movements of the snake, which is a level of consistency that would be incredibly difficult to manufacture. If it has been changed, it's been changed to a minimal degree.
So, could it be a relative of Titanoboa? Marine biologist Dr. Shay Conger says that even if the video is totally legit, the creature's distended midsection is key evidence.
It appears to have consumed a very large prey, possibly a capybara or some type of ungulate. From what we know about the Titanoboa, they primarily consume fish.
Based on that dietary profile, Conger concludes this is a giant anaconda. But interestingly, she is not prepared to dismiss the notion that it could still be the god Boyuna.
The people that inhabit this area have spent centuries living around these animals. The division between the deity and the biological creature are not two different things. So to deny the fact that this animal may embody a regional deity or religious icon is outside the scope of what science should do.
So with that guidance in mind, our verdict, this is a giant anaconda. And whether you want to call it a predator, a deity, or some combination of both depends on how close you live to it. With a length of nearly 4,000 miles, the Yangtze is the third longest river in the world. Its waters are home to several unique aquatic species. But in September 2019, a viral video captures an image of something unprecedented. Taken from a ferry dock, the video captures what looks like a mysterious creature slithering along the surface of the water. You can't see a head, but that sure looks like a powerful tail. And eyeballing its size relative to its distance from the dock and the height of this man observing the scene, it appears to be at least 10 feet long. Once the video goes viral, it racks up tens of millions of views, and a new legend is born.
People dubbed the creature the Three Gorges water monster. Some have speculated that this creature could actually be a giant water snake or eel of some kind that has mutated and become huge thanks to pollution.
Field researcher Ken Gerhardt has extensively studied many of the legendary beasts said to inhabit the waterways of China.
In this part of the world, there are legends of mythical serpent-like creatures. You have the dragons known as the Lung, which are described as huge and serpentine and scaly, with 4 stubby limbs, each with 5 claws. There's also the Naga, described as dark and serpentine, up to 40 feet in length.
So what is this mysterious object slithering through the water? It doesn't seem to be tied to anything towing it along. What does that mean? Let's check with our experts. First, we take the video to our marine biologist, Dr. Shay Conger.
What we see in this video is what appears to be a pretty large animal that appears to have some sort of a tail that's moving back and forth.
Dr. Conger's first guess is that this might be some kind of large eel, but the largest known eel, coincidentally called the European conger, has never been sighted in these waters.
I don't think there's species of eel that are as large as this in the area.
Conger says when it comes to endemic Yangtze River creatures, there are plenty of cool candidates.
One of the unique animals to the area is the giant salamander. It can get up to 6 feet long and weigh over 100 pounds. But I don't think this is a giant salamander because it has a lot of irregularities on the top of it. And if this were a type of salamander, we would expect this would be kind of a smooth animal with a smoother, longer tail moving through the water.
Dr. Conger wonders if this might be the elusive Chinese sturgeon, which can reach lengths of 16 feet.
They evolved over 100 million years ago, so they're, in essence, living prehistoric animals. However, sturgeon have really defined tail fins that would be sticking above the surface of the water. And because I don't see that type of fin or tail, I can conclude this probably isn't a sturgeon.
So could it just be a hoax? We ask our resident video forensic expert, Michael Primo.
I don't see any major splicing that took place throughout this object as it's swimming, if you will.
I do not believe that this recording has been doctored or manipulated with malicious intent.
But Primo digs deeper and finds a telltale sign that things may not be as they seem.
When we look at the ripples as this object is traveling through the water, there is no definitive pattern as it's traveling through the water that we would expect to see from something that we know is like a fish or a shark. There are some unnatural behaviors. Upon further investigation, we came across this recording that is allegedly a dark-colored rubber airbag.
Primo suggests that's not a tail propelling a creature through the water, just a strong Yangtze current moving one end of the big airbag back and forth.
So it is possible that this is what we were actually seeing in the river, and it wasn't actually some sort of river monster.
So, about the theory that the Yangtze River monster was created by pollution. Turns out that's true. But it's not an overgrown snake. It's a long black rubber industrial airbag, likely discarded by a nearby shipyard. But still, there is a lesson here. More and more of the Yangtze's unique aquatic life is going extinct due to pollution and overfishing. In October 2017, a man is about to step into his sister's bathroom in Alor Setar, Malaysia, when he notices something crawling out of the toilet. The 28-year-old immediately rushes out to tell his sister, who whips out her camera and captures this video. The footage shows a strange, slithering creature emerging from the bathroom with its head poking out of the door. It surveys its surroundings before finally crawling out onto the tiled floor. Let's take another look. The creature appears to be about 6 feet long, with a small head, thick body, and a short tail. Field researcher Ken Gerhardt has studied river monsters, lake monsters, and now sewer monsters.
It's large, it's slimy and black. It's crawling out of a toilet. That's about as bad as it gets. People don't generally spend a lot of time, if any time, in a sewer. So we really don't have any idea of what types of creepy crawlies might be down there.
Gerhard says the most persistent urban legend involves the sewers of the Big Apple.
There are accounts and rumors going back to the 1930s that describe sizable alligators actually living and breeding in the New York sewer system. There is one theory that perhaps these were pets that were somehow discarded and flushed down the toilet when they were small and then grew to massive sizes in the sewer.
Of course, not all sewer animals are monsters. Sometimes animals just get stuck in the sewers, trapped by size or circumstance. And everything from giant rats, feral cats, even cows, have been found in sewer systems around the world. And marine biologist Dr. Shay Conger says in Southeast Asia, giant snakes turn up down there too.
It's a really tropical, forested environment. In fact, it's been known that there have been snakes that have emerged from toilets or plumbing.
In fact, in 2019, this 14-foot cobra was found in a sewer in Thailand. Sewer creatures have been making headlines for decades, but it is rare to encounter anything this big and this disturbing. So could this be a giant snake? Or maybe just some form of camera trickery? Let's go to our video expert.
This recording has been compressed pretty heavily, so in layman's terms, it's too blurry to see anything to be able to identify exactly what we're seeing. However, in terms of authenticity of the way that the recording is playing and the way that the camera operator is capturing this object, I don't see anything to suggest it's been CGI'd or Photoshopped.
So if the video is real, is this thing a snake? Dr. Conger says we need to consider other slimy creatures known to slither across this part of the world.
Malaysia is home to amphibians that we call caecilians. And these are salamander-like animals that don't have limbs or any external appendages, so they look a bit like giant worms. These animals can actually get 5 to 6 feet long, but what you have in essence is an animal that's only a few inches in diameter. And so my idea that this could be some sort of caecilian goes out the window.
Conger has another thought that's even grosser.
Malaysia is pretty well known for its leeches, which are blood-sucking invertebrates. But if this were a leech, it would have to be 30 or 40 times bigger than a known species of leech, which I think is really unlikely.
Professor Floyd Hayes, who has been fascinated with snakes since childhood, is pretty sure he knows what we're looking at. And it's not some sort of mythical serpent.
There are quite a few different species of snakes in Malaysia. This one appears to be very thick-bodied, and there's not that many species that would look like this. It looks a lot like the elephant trunk snake.
Hayes says that the baggy skin, which gives the impression that it's too big for the animal, is the telltale sign. So our verdict? Based on its known habitat and size, we think the sewer monster is an elephant trunk snake. And while they usually make their homes near rivers and lagoons, this one chose a toilet instead. No accounting for taste.